Hey everybody, welcome to the Hammerheads Show. I am Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and you can't have a Hammerhead Show if you don't have the sneakerheads. So that's where Rob comes in. Rob Shu, how you doing, Rob?
I'm doing very well, Jack. Excited to have gotten the second preseason game down.
Yeah, two down, one more to go, and it's right around the corner. We only have a couple of days to get ready for it. They had practice in Santa Clara today. I was not there, but from what I could see, it looked like it was a light practice in terms of it was without shoulder pads. So from that standpoint, it was a little bit lighter. And then tomorrow, I'm sure I would guess, is going to be a padded practice. And then they'll jump on board a plane on Wednesday and do a walkthrough in Houston before the game Thursday night. So real quick, before we get this thing started, just look at a few of the folks over in the comment section. We have Raphael 5629ers, Toolbox member. He says, "What's up, Jack, Rob, members of the Toolbox, and everyone." Hello, Raphael. Good to have you on board. We've got Ellen, who says, "Jack, Hammer, and Rob Shu, everyone, good evening from Texas. Debo that like button." Oh, hey, in Texas, at least you're off work already. It's probably hotter than heck in Texas, though, too.
That's right.
And then we've got Lucas coming to us from Austria. He says, "Hi, Jack and Rob. Good to have you on board."
Nice.
And then one more. We got another Toolbox member. It's Dirk Pippin. He says, "Woo! Let's friggin' go," he says on his next one. So, yeah, let's get into it. The 49ers made some moves today. It was announced early this morning. They ended up making the announcement official right before they hit the practice field. But Tayshaun Gibson, veteran safety, is now a member of the 49ers. And to make room for that, they released Austin Mack, who was a veteran wide receiver. They waived him with an injury designation. What is your feeling, Rob, on this move?
I mean, it strikes you as one that would be just a camp body move, in my opinion. You have the injury to Jimmy Ward, obviously, something that's a concern, something that could linger into the regular season. But my guess is that even though Tayshaun Gibson comes in with significant experience, I mean, he certainly has years of experience, most recently with the Chicago Bears, but played 3 years in Jacksonville, started his career in Cleveland, and has put up reasonable numbers. I mean, if the Jimmy Ward injury did linger, this feels like a solid veteran addition that you would want on the roster, have someone in there with real game experience to back up the guys that are already in there, a little more athletic potentially in Tarvarius Moore, a little more of a scheme fit in Hufanga being out there. But this feels like good depth for the 49ers to have brought in.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. I think it's a matter of depth, and I also have a feeling that you bring in a guy like Gibson. Today you had George Odom working with the starters. Odom's a good starter. He started some games last year for Indianapolis, so he has some experience there. To me, this is more of a move to try to keep Tarvarius Moore off of the field in a starter's role. Bring in a veteran who's played at a high level, a decent level, and bring him in. And I think that's the reason that you have him. If something, I think. Let's see what happens over the next few days. If George Odom becomes the starter, I think they want to have the next guy off the bench be somebody other than Tarvarius Moore, and that's where Gibson comes in. I think that's the direction that this is headed.
What are your observations of Tarvarius Moore from the training camp practices? Did he struggle a bit there, or has he flashed the athleticism that made him so appealing to the 49ers earlier in his career?
He's been okay. The best part, he had the one practice early on where he had a couple of pass breakups where he had to really get up and those kind of things, which showed you that at least he wasn't worried about the Achilles bothering him anymore. But he doesn't look like he has the explosiveness that he had in years past. He used to be a cornerback / safety kind of guy, and I we saw him just get burned against Green Bay, and we didn't see Minnesota really give him challenge him. Everything against that Minnesota threw was short. They didn't really challenge him at all. I think there might have been one play, but he wasn't in man coverage on that. He was back deep, so it's a little bit different.
Do you see the 49ers as most likely keeping 3 or 4 safeties going into the season? Or do you think that depends upon the health of Jimmy Ward?
Well, they'll keep 4. I think they'll keep 4. They might even have to keep 5 if Jimmy Ward's not healthy. So that kind of creates some issues on the roster there, right? If you've got a guy that's injured, you don't want to put him on injured reserve and then lose him for a few weeks if he's only going to be missing a week. So there could be some interesting roster decisions that have to be played there. They might have to go with only 3 that can play, and maybe, you know, a guy like Moore or something like that, or maybe even Gibson. I don't know. Maybe one of these guys is cut, but they work out a deal with him to kind of be able to bring him back onto the practice squad with the understanding of, you know, he's still going to get paid kind of thing.
Yeah, Gibson feels like the kind of guy, even if you want him on the roster, that seems like the type of cut that you make last minute. He was available on the waiver wire. He was available in free agency up until this point. So you wouldn't expect anyone to come in and swoop him. And then you bring him back after week 1 so that his salary isn't guaranteed for the entirety of the year. And you make do for that week 1 matchup against Chicago.
Yeah, so that way you're ready. At least you got that one game handled. And hopefully it's only going to be a game if it is at all. You know, for Jimmy Ward, because that's a big deal. Because Jimmy Ward's a guy who he's not going to make the NFL's top 100 list. He's not thought of that highly around the NFL, but I think that the people that really know do think he's a really good safety. You know, even if he's outside the top 100 or whatever, he's still a good quality NFL starting safety, above average for sure, and I'd say probably right in that, you know, that top 5 to 6 range. And he's going to, I think he was due for a big season. So hopefully that hamstring injury isn't that big of an issue.
And he's well used within our scheme, right? He's a perfect scheme fit for the 49ers in that they know exactly how to use him.
Yeah, it's very similar to like even Jaquiski Tartt, right? Jaquiski Tartt's a guy who was a really good scheme fit for the 49ers. Started for him whenever he was healthy. And right now, you know, from everything, again, I saw it on over the weekend, Jaquiski Tartt's running with the 3rd team out in Philadelphia. You know, who knows what that means if that's really where he is, but you know, yeah,
it does say something.
It does. It says something about where he is. You know,
yeah, in terms absolutely
of progress. So, yeah, we'll see how it plays out. This will be interesting. I heard that he was working with the 2s today, meaning Tayshaun Gibson was working with the 2nd team. So that makes sense. That he's back there with that group, jumping over the undrafted rookie free agents that they brought in who make up the rest of the safety room. So that would make sense, even though they played pretty well. It's hard to really get a whole lot out of that Minnesota game because those quarterbacks for the Vikings were just that bad. But
they were struggling.
Yeah, they were struggling. You could the 49ers backups we'll get into that in a minute. But before we get into the game, one other thing that came up today, and you and I have had this discussion a few times on between our, you know, my channel and your channel on our shows, but it's the whole thing with the arm fatigue discussion that came up with Trey Lance over the offseason. There were reports that came out about it, and kind of one thing led to another, and you and I kind of started putting together the points. And you know, Albert Breer came out today, and he had another quote from Adam Dedu, who is the quarterback coach that worked with Trey Lance. And I think at this point, it's pretty clear that there was some kind of an issue going on last year. It doesn't mean that it's affecting him now, but it was definitely a point of emphasis this offseason. And those reports of there being issues, the more you look at it, I think the more they're accurate.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here is that there have been a significant number of negative reports about the San Francisco 49ers about Trey Lance. And I think that has led to the fan base seeing all of the negative reports in the same light as unwarranted, unmerited, and something that should be ignored. And I could understand that tendency because it has seemed like there's an exorbitant amount of negative material and that it's without basis. But it is a mistake to cast everything aside without looking at what does and doesn't have supporting evidence. This one seems to be a story that's real. It doesn't mean that it's disparaging Trey Lance. It doesn't mean that it is indicating an inability to be successful this year. It's a story about last year and one that makes sense when you unfold all the details of the injury to the finger leading to Trey Lance feeling as if he had to adjust his throwing motion, and that throwing motion leading to arm fatigue. It's not a strike against Trey Lance this season, but it does appear that it was legitimate reporting, something that I was skeptical about as well, but legitimate reporting about Trey Lance and what he went through last season.
Yeah. That's it. I agree with you. I was also very skeptical of when it first came out. I did not believe the reports. I kind of chuckled about it, as I think almost every 49er fan did. Uh, and a lot of that was because I don't think we realized, we knew who the guy was from Philadelphia that made the original report. And then there was a news guy, a couple other people. But when you have the guy that worked with him, the coach that worked with him, and then you have guys like Matt Mayoko and Mike Silver, who have been doing this for a long period of time and respectable, are reputable journalists. I mean, you don't do it for as long as they do if you're just making it up. When you have that, and then you also have Kyle Shanahan tell you that he had some issues last year, but not necessarily anything more than other guys. But still, there was a concern. And for me, it's more about I think it's important for us to be able to believe the reporters that are giving you the information. There's such a in our country right now, not to get into politics too much, but in our country right now, if we don't like what somebody says, we just say, that's bullshit. Or excuse my language, we just said, that's fake news. But
right,
in this case, you have multiple people who have told you the same thing. Doesn't mean that it affects Trey Lance now. It just means that there was some issue with it last year. It was a concern for the team. There's various levels of concern. Doesn't mean that they were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? But it's like, we just need to make sure that we monitor us and get them ready to go. And that's really it. I think that we need to understand, not everything that happens necessarily means we need to run around like our hair's on fire.
Right. And I do think that it is something that helps you paint a complete picture of Trey Lance and underscores the idea that he does not have all that many reps underneath his belt, that he is someone who most likely, could he come in and light the world on fire from day one? Absolutely. It's a distinct possibility, but I think the more likely outcome is that someone with so few reps in college, and certainly so few reps in the pros, has some ups and downs and goes through some of these things. And it doesn't mean that he can't have that long-term success. It doesn't mean that he's not going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. It just is what he's going through at this moment.
Yeah, it's just it was what he was going through then. Doesn't mean that he's going through it now. It's just important. Again, it's knowing that you can trust people, and it's not just their opinion, that they're reporting facts. Because there's a big difference, because in our media, and there's a time to do your facts, and there's time to do your opinions, and you need to be able to separate the two. I just find that interesting. Lucas, I want to say real quick, shout out to Lucas, he's been a long time person who's always in our chat, and it's great to see him become a Toolbox member today. So thank you very much, Lucas. Appreciate it. And speaking of it, Trey Lance and struggles, before we get into the game, one last thing is the reports from practice today are, day 17, 9 of 16, 3 picks, nearly 4. One for Talanoa Hufanga, Fred Warner with another one, and then there was one by Emmanuel Mosley as well, who it was good to hear that he's back. I know that he was working his way back last week in Minnesota, same with Eric Armstead, but it sounded like they were a bigger part of practice today. So that's good. It's good. It's good to see those veterans coming back.
It is. And you can have a different takeaway from those statistics, right? You can either point to the fact that, hey, Trey has had some ups and downs throughout training camp, or you can hang your hat on, hey, the defense has finally seemed to figure out forcing those turnovers in comparison to going through training camp last year versus this year. It's sort of night and day there. Most likely it's a little bit of both, right? That Trey is inexperienced. He is going to have his ups and downs, and this defense is improved from last year and probably will force more turnovers than they were able to in 2021.
Yeah. And I wish I was there today. I would have loved to be able to report on it. From what I understand, that at least 2 of them were because of passes that were deflected. So it would have been interesting to see if it was a matter of, like everybody was saying earlier on, if he was really trying to force something in there or what happened. It's training camp. It's okay. It was 9 of 16. That's a pretty good number too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I agree with you. It's good to, hey, if Trey Lance is struggling, that means and the defense is making plays, that's good for the 49ers, and Kyle Shanahan. That's why, as part of that report from Albert Breer today, there was a part in there where he was talking about how there would be interceptions at training camp, and he would be asked questions from the reporters about him having a bad day. And meanwhile, he's like thinking, I thought it was a good day. I like the fact that he went there. The result wasn't good, but I'm glad that he was trying that throw. I'm glad he made the right read and went to the right spot. And Shanahan's talked about that quite a bit in his time as the head coach. So 9 of 16, 3 picks. Not a good day, but hey, there's tomorrow. We still got it, a long ways to go before Thursday, at least 3 days.
Yeah, at least 3 days to turn things around. Plenty of time.
Because
it's practice, right? They're going after those looks that are tough. Hopefully, Lance is making those throws that he feels like he needs the reps on. And once we get to the regular season, I have the utmost confidence that Kyle Shanahan will scheme around Lance's strengths and minimize those weaknesses.
Yep. And then real quick, I misspoke earlier. So a few people have brought this up, but I'll just pull the latest one up. And I don't know if it was 90. Somebody said 96. No, Z here is saying that it was 94. So Jimmy, it should be Jimmie, because we're not talking JMMY is Jimmy Garoppolo. So we know that's not the right one.
He didn't make the 100 list.
Jimmy Ward is in the top 100. See, I need to start paying more closely attention to these lists, right? So obviously he's well, I was saying he's a well-respected player. So there you go. He made the list. Fantastic. The people that know best, which I think is the players, have him down in the top 100. So congratulations, Jimmy Ward. Sorry that I misspoke. I'll get my stuff right next time. I apologize. Let's get into the game a little bit. The game on Saturday night. The big takeaway, my big picture takeaway. The 49ers backups are better than the Minnesota Vikings backups.
Right. That is a fact, Jack. That was proven on the field Saturday.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I don't even know if it was really that close of a game. It's the 49ers. There was the one bad play down by the goal line, and I think it probably should have been called offsides on the defense. The way I don't know how you can hit the center's helmet like as soon as he starts to snap the ball if you aren't already starting to cross the line of scrimmage. But other than that, I think the 49ers they played well. I shouldn't even say play. Playing well isn't right. They didn't play well. It was a pretty ugly game for the offense early on, but the defense played well.
Yeah, early on, the offense didn't seem to generate all that much, right? It felt like they were in a slog attempting to get yards.
Yeah, it was one step forward, 2 steps back. You had Ross Dwelly he had a really nice reception, but he also had a couple of false starts, and you could tell it was a bunch of guys who don't play together a lot. So
right.
Let's talk about the quarterbacks really quick. But before we do that, Andrew says, Jack, you're a top 100 49ers writer. Considering the fact that there's about 25, I'll take that. Thank you.
That's a solid ranking right there. Solid.
I'm in the top 100. Do I get a plaque for that, Andrew? Let's talk about the quarterbacks. How did you feel with when you watch Brock Purdy and Nate Sudfeld? What was your takeaway for those two?
My takeaway from Nate Sudfeld specifically is that I'm starting to come around to this idea that Nate Sudfeld is a capable backup quarterback specifically for this team. He seems to me to be willing to operate within the scheme of the offense, take what a defense is willing to give him, occasionally, push the ball a little bit, but not aggressively, right? Not taking a ton of chances. And when I look at the way in which this team is made and at least the idea that what you want from a backup quarterback on a team like this is to be able to come in and win a couple of games, right? If you lose your starting quarterback for half the season, more than half the season, everything's out the window. At that point, you can't really plan for that. But what you can plan for is assuming that much like the NFL average, your quarterback is going to miss a couple of games that season, and you need a capable guy to come in and be able to allow your team to compete, hopefully win a couple of those matchups. And I get the sense that Sudfeld could do that he could come in, complete a high percentage of passes, again, take what the defense is giving him, not turn the ball over, and allow this defense to keep the 49ers in games and maybe have some stud on the offense, make a play, yards after the catch, big time touchdown, and win one of those matchups. So I'm pretty excited about Nate Sudfeld as a great value backup quarterback.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say that I'm excited about Nate Sudfeld.
Maybe that's overselling it.
No, but I will say that in some ways I feel like I was wrong. Right? If you go back to before training camp started, I sent out a tweet that got everybody fired up, saying that I thought the 49ers would be better off to have Jimmy Garoppolo as a backup instead of Nate Sudfeld. That would be a better quarterback room. I still feel that it's a better quarterback room.
Agreed.
But Nate Sudfeld has looked better to me than I was expecting. And I just went in, I didn't go into the offseason with any expectations for any of them, and just kind of let it play out. And I've been surprised by how efficient he's been. He's been pretty good, other than a couple of throws here and there. He's been decent. He had a really bad pick. I think it was during mini camp where he was rolling to his right, and instead of just letting it go, he kind of short armed it, and the guy picked it off underneath him and what have you. But I thought he's been good, and I thought he played fine on Saturday night. And Brock Purdy, I thought Brock Purdy played well. Also, his numbers were when you look at his numbers, he had a bunch of drops. I think he had at least 3 drops that I counted.
Yeah.
He had a throwaway, so that's 4 incompletions, because he had 9 incompletions total. So that's 4 of them were a throwaway to stop the clock and 3 drops. So that gets you to, if the 2 that he throws, if the 3 drops are caught, he's at 17 of 23, and everybody's thinking his numbers look really good.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have the drops, and you had a couple of deep shots at the end of the half where they're just taking a shot to see if they can get into the end zone. So, all in all, I thought that both quarterbacks handled themselves well. I don't agree that Brock Purdy is the second coming, I think, of anything, because I've seen some of those reports lately about how good he looks. I think Brock Purdy is a very good doppelganger for Nick Mullins.
Yeah, and I tend to think that fans are getting excited about, hey, we may have to put Brock Purdy onto the 53-man roster so he doesn't get swept up. And I do think that the threshold for Kyle Shanahan, keeping him on the 53-man roster in the hopes that he will add future value as a backup quarterback for the 49ers, I think that threshold is lower than the threshold of other teams out there who would legitimately carry a third quarterback in order to come in and grab Brock Purdy off of waivers. So I think there is a chance that Purdy continues to play well and earns himself a roster spot, but I think it would be a mistake to do so, because my guess is he would clear waivers and would be able to revert to the practice squad.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the case really with both of those guys. So we'll see how they decide that they want to work this. But with all the other positions of need that they have on this team, they're a very deep team, but they also have some injury issues and some things you got to be concerned about, like along the offensive line and in the secondary. And so I think when you're looking at this team, I just don't see why you take 3 quarterbacks. I just they might, but to me, I think that's a little bit of a waste of a spot on a roster for somebody that can give you more value.
Yeah, I agree. It would be keeping an extra spot because the competition is tight, but the talent level isn't all that spectacular. So you're keeping a position where the talent isn't spectacular and potentially getting rid of a position group where the talent is much closer to starting level, just because of the importance of quarterback.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, and this is off of the quarterbacks, we're moving over to the running backs now. But another reason why you would keep only 2 quarterbacks is so that maybe you can, instead of only keeping 4 running backs and a fullback, you keep 5 running backs and the fullback, because you start looking at this running back roster that they have. I don't know if there's one that they can release and then pull back from the practice squad or get onto the practice squad, because you look at it, and the guys that are kind of on the back end of it, you're talking about Jermichael Hasty and Trey Sermon and Jordan Mason. Of those 3, I think Jordan Mason is the best of that group. Who do you think makes it, or what are your thoughts on that running back room?
This is one of the toughest position groups to suss out at this particular point in time, because each running back has a reason why you would keep them on the roster. Mason, because he is showing you he may be the best running back out there. Jermichael Hasty, well, he's a different body type than the other running backs that you have there, right? He's the smaller, shiftier back, and maybe you need one of those on the roster to fill out the position group just such. Trey Sermon, are you really willing to give up on someone that you invested that much draft capital in just his second year in the league? So when you try to cut it down, and Jeff Wilson Jr., he's got the mindset that Kyle Shanahan loves. He's the savvy veteran of the group. He has shown that he can do it consistently over a long period of time. This is one that, honestly, I've been looking at ways to find that 5th roster spot, again, not counting Juice, so that the Niners can keep 5 running backs and Juice on this roster. Maybe it comes at the expense of one of the wide receiver positions. But this is absolutely, as we head into the third preseason game, one of the groups that I've got my eye on, because it's fascinating to wonder who's going to make it and who might get poached.
Yeah, because it's tough. You look at this group, and like I said earlier, I don't see it with Trey Sermon. There were times during training camp where I thought he's been really good. I thought that in week 1 against Green Bay, some of it was because of the blocking up front, and I stand by that. I think that the Mike McGlinchey miss and the miss by Justin School were big parts of the reason why his numbers were so bad. Saturday night, his numbers were bad just because he didn't run good. There were yards to be made on carries, and he just did not follow the blockers. He didn't run to the holes. I just felt like it was a rough night for Trey Sermon. How did you see Sermon's night?
I agree. Initially, my initial thought was that it was, again, the offensive line that was not blocking at a level that they should for the run game, not opening up holes. In going back and in seeing some of the video clips that are out there, especially when you get the various angles that you get from the All-22 film, there are some clear-cut instances where Sermon didn't follow the lead blocker, left yards on the table. And that is concerning because, it's his second year in. He clearly struggled last year. You would think that he applied himself as best as possible to avoid a sophomore slump. And now we're faced with a pretty significant ask for the front office. Decide between somebody that you gave up draft capital to draft in the third round, or, go with the new unproven rookie who seems to be lighting it up. And again, is one of those undrafted gems that you found.
Yeah, I think it's, when I look at the running back room, I really like. I don't even think Tyrion Davis-Price. If Tyrion Davis-Price wasn't a third round draft pick this year, we wouldn't be talking about him the way that he's being talked about. This is a guy who was brought in because of his physical running style. They have a 4th and 1. I don't even think it was a full 1 in the first quarter, and instead of just sticking his nose up into the hole and just pushing the lineman and picking up that yard, he bounces it outside and runs sideways along the line of scrimmage. And it's not the first time we've seen him do that in a short yardage situation. He did that same thing against Green Bay on a run to the left where there's a hole, but instead of hitting the hole, he cuts outside. I don't know what he's seen. There was another run, I think it was a run that people really liked, where he gets the ball going to the right. He starts sliding. He's to the left. Excuse me. He starts sliding to his right. He kind of breaks a couple of tackles, and then he got popped. I don't know if you remember that one. It wasn't the one where he had the long run, but it was about 5. It was about a gain of about 5 to the right side, and he got drilled at the end of that one because somebody kind of was holding him, and he got nailed. If he just runs to the right spot, if he just follows his blocker, that's a big gain. That's a gain of probably 8 to 9 to 10 yards because the hole's there. He just bounces it away from where the ball's supposed to go, and then he's on his own. Picking up the rest of the yardage. So I think when you look at the running backs like Tyrion Davis-Price and Trey Sermon as to why they're kind of having some struggles, I think you need to look at where they're running the ball because they're not running where they're supposed to go. And then you bring in Jordan Mason off the bench. This guy deserves to be getting. He deserves to be getting run with the starters. He probably won't because that's not. They didn't do it last year with Elijah Mitchell either.
Right.
But the way he runs the ball is what the 49ers need. They need a guy that attacks the line of scrimmage and makes one cut and keeps going. That's what they need, and that's not what they're getting from the top 2 guys that they have on the roster right now.
And this is going to be a fascinating situation to watch play out because it puts 2 things head to head for the 49ers. One, their willingness to say, yes, this undrafted or late round running back prospect is in fact the man, and we need to get him the carries, versus being a bit stubborn with some of the higher draft picks and an unwillingness to admit that maybe it was a mistake with Trey Sermon. And that could come to a head in deciding who is on this roster versus who gets cut.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be one of the groups that's going to be a lot of fun to check out. And then real quick, Aaron from 49ers First Takes, thank you very much for the super sticker. Really appreciate that. Wanted to make sure I recognize that. And then going back to the quarterbacks, just really quick, I want to bring up, there was a good comment here. It was from Emiliano. He says, Jack, maybe your assessment of Sudfeld and Purdy is an indication of Gracie's performance so far as QB coach. Gracie is one of the common denominators. He is. You have Gracie and Shanahan and their ability to put these guys in position to succeed.
No doubt. Shanahan deserves credit for continually finding the next coaches to step in when his coaches are inevitably poached by other teams.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, I think you're right. Rohan, I wasn't at practice today. You asked that question. I wasn't able to make it up there today. I had other commitments that I had to tend to, but I will be up at practice tomorrow. So I'll be able to see that. And if it's accurate that Jason Poe ran some with the first team offense, that's great. I think Jason Poe is I've said it repeatedly over about the last week and a half. I think Jason Poe is the most improved 49ers player that I've seen. If you go from beginning of this season in rookie minicamp to where they are now, I think Jason Poe is one of the most approved. So it's good if he got some rep with the first group. That's good to see because he deserves it. In terms of the wide receivers, did you have any takeaways on the wide receivers other than Juwan Jennings just can't seem to get out of his own way?
That's the biggest question mark for me right now is definitely Juwan Jennings, but I'm left with increased optimism for Danny Gray that throughout this season, he really could turn out to be something special. I mean, obviously he has the wheels to be that immediate deep threat that takes the top off of the defense and allows the 49ers to operate underneath in a way that they haven't been able to do in such a long time because they were minus the deep threat and minus the ability to get the ball to the deep threat. Now you seem to have both. I'm left with question marks around the tail end of the wide receiver roster. Is there anyone on this team that warrants keeping that sixth wide receiver spot, or is that halfback room just too talented and you need the additional bodies there in that room? It strikes me as, you have Malik Turner, who contributes on special teams and was able to poke the ball away for that fumble on special teams. If it's going to be a sixth wide receiver, that seems to be the most likely scenario wherein it is a special teams designated spot and Malik Turner is able to contribute there as a gunner on those special teams coverage units.
Yeah, and I think that would be the reason that he gets that. And then, I think that I agree with you quite a bit. The Danny Gray piece, what you said on Gray, he has shown up, and what I really like about Gray is he has the speed, but we've also seen him now in 2 games make tough catches over the middle, and that was good to see. He also made a catch on the little out to the left side, so it was good to see him do other things, and we saw him go across the middle against Green Bay too. So he's not suffering from the Dante Pettis, I'm afraid to go over the middle syndrome that he had. It's good to see a guy who seems to be able to hit all the spots on the field and is really coming in his own. And this is a guy again, who's grown. I didn't get to see much of him during OTAs and minicamp because he was out for quite a bit of it with a hamstring issue early in training camp. Wasn't impressive, but he's really turned it on over about the last 3 weeks or so. And it's good to see.
And I do think that's a good comparison to mention Dante Pettis, because that is what I see in the opposite for Danny Gray is attacking the catch point, right? Really feeling like he is going after the ball, even when it is over the middle.
Yeah. So, and I agree with you on the receivers. I just think Malik Turner is at the back end of it. It's going to be Malik Turner or Marcus Johnson. I think it's going to be one of those two. And then you get to the offensive line. I don't think you can really take a whole lot away from the offensive line and their performance on Saturday night. You only had the 2 starters, Aaron Banks at left guard and Spencer Burford at right guard. Beyond that, you had the third team center. You had a guy playing right tackle who's probably the 4th or 5th guy in terms of tackles that they feel. And then you have Justin School on the other side, and Justin School hasn't been able to block anybody when it comes to pass protection throughout training camp. So the struggles early on, there was a lot of pressure on the quarterback, but a lot of that pressure wasn't coming from the guys that you expect to start. It was coming from Justin School getting beat, Keaton Sutherland at center getting beat, and then Jordan Mills. Jordan Mills gave up 3 pressures in that game, which was the most of any of the offensive linemen.
Yeah, it's tough for me to make any big predictions about this offensive line group. I feel reasonably certain in saying that it's not going to be an elite line early in the season. That if it is a good line, it's going to be a good line that gels over the course of a season because of the number of new bodies that you're throwing there in the center. I take some solace in there being good and bad for Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford when you look back over the last couple of games. It's, something you would expect, some bumps and bruises as they get used to playing that position. It leaves me thinking that, hey, it's a good thing Trey Lance is a mobile quarterback because he's going to need to use those legs early on as this line gets used to playing next to one another. But I also feel that there is enough depth along the line, and those that are in are playing well enough that I do not believe it will be a sieve. I don't think it's going to leak to the point where it derails this entire offense. I think it will be a suitably good offensive line with the potential to gel and turn into something special as the season moves on, if these young players turn out to be who we hope they are.
Yeah, I think the offense is going to be fine once they have the offensive line is going to do just fine when they have Trent Williams at left tackle. That's the biggest thing. And they have whoever it is they choose to be the starter at center, whether it's going to be Brendel or Brunskill. It's most likely going to be Jake Brendel. If Jake Brendel and Trent Williams are out there and it's Colton McKivitz at right tackle, the Flyers are going to be okay. They're going to obviously better if it's Mike McGlinchey out at right tackle. But either way, that's proven itself out already throughout training camp. When they're full first team offensive line, meaning it's McGlinchey and Williams on the edges, it's amazing how all of a sudden their pass protection increases, right? So I think they'll be okay. I don't know if they're going to be top 10 or whatever. I don't think they're going to be that bad though. And I think that you're right. I think that Trey Lance is going to help him out. He knows how to move around in the pocket. He's already shown his ability to move and slide and do all those types of things. So I think numbers wise, this offensive line might even end up looking better than last year's just because of what happened, what the quarterback can do.
Yeah, that would be a fantastic improvement. Absolutely. Especially when you're saving some money by not paying one of your own big free agents and just moving on to the next man up mentality.
Exactly. And then we go over to the defensive line and Drake Jackson put on a show. I thought Drake Jackson was phenomenal in that game. Again, just his ability to, there was the one play where it was a screen. He's off to the right side of the offense, and he's falling down and he's reaching up and he's getting his hand on the ball. You see him, holding the edge and being able to still make the tackle on the running back. The interception from George Odom. That was caused by Drake Jackson. Drake Jackson gets in the face of the quarterback who can't follow through. He kind of short arms it because he has this big guy right in front of him, and he picks it off and it goes the other way. I thought Drake Jackson was very good.
I agree that it is fun to watch Drake Jackson out there. Got a lot of high hopes for him this season and beyond. And I was stoked to see Javon Kinlaw out there looking like the guy that I hope he's going to look like all season. It's a little bit different when he is out there against presumably backups for Minnesota, that you then expect someone who is your starter going against primarily backups to jump off the page as being dominant. And it looked as if Kinlaw was able to do that, eating up some double teams, getting the sack, which you hope to see a couple of times this season. But at a bare minimum, if he is able to stay healthy, to consistently force teams into situations where they need to double team him there in the middle, I mean, that is a boon for the San Francisco 49ers and this defensive line, because they need him to step up in particular to fill in for DJ Jones, right, and being a run stuffer of sorts, but in eating up those double teams to free up Nick Bosa as well.
Yeah, but I really like that. It was nice to see him on the sack, because a lot of times it's he's rushing into the chest of the offensive lineman. Sometimes that's by design because that's what they want him to do, to kind of crash the pocket and push it in. But when he a couple of times in that game, he took edges and beat the guy. The one was the sack. It was a really nice inside move, knocked his arms away and got through. And that was a really nice play on his part. And he had another one. I don't remember what quarter it was, but the ball was going in the opposite direction, and he broke in. It ended up being a complete pass, but he got by the guard pretty quick. I thought he was going to be able to get a pass breakup, but just missed it. But I think, I agree with you there too. That 99 Kinlaw, he's going. I think if he can stay healthy, he's ready for a big season.
Could be a big one, could be a special season, and you'd love to see it because he deserves it. I mean, the guy has definitely been attempting to stay healthy, attempting to be relevant for this team, and just struggling. It would be nice to see his hard effort this offseason rewarded.
Yeah, he was really positive about it after the game. From the interviews that I saw, I wasn't in Minnesota, but just the interviews that I saw in the locker room, he was talking about how it's nice to not have those injuries anymore, and he can just go out and have fun and play. So we'll see if he can stay healthy and play 15, 16 games. I'm not going to say that he's going to play all 17, but if he can play the majority of them, and he can, I think he can play at a high level and really help this unit out. So it'll be good to see.
Absolutely.
Everybody, like Raphael 5629ers here, member of the Toolbox, says like and subscribe, everyone. So I'll take this time to ask you guys to do that. We've got about 7 more minutes left, and then Rob's got to get going because he's got a fun show that he's going to be doing over on his channel.
Yes, sir.
Sliding away from the offensive line, even the linebacker group, I think, this linebacker core, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles and Oren Burks and Marcelino McCurry-Ball, this linebacker group is just impressive every week.
It really is. And I'm torn between the idea of, hey, you have such a glut of talented players at the position. You should probably trade one away because at the end of this season, you're not going to be able to re-sign both Azeez Al-Shire and Dre Greenlaw. And you have some young up-and-coming talent that if you don't put them on the 53-man roster, there's every chance someone comes in and swoops them up because they know that you are a linebacker university pumping out these candidates that seem to just keep revolving within the 49ers system. So it's one of those that I'm torn. Do you lessen the strength of the team, right? Or at least one of the strengths of the team in a phenomenal linebacker room and bring in some assets for future years? Or is it that special of a group that you just hope some of these younger players sneak their way onto the practice squad and you take your chances because you want to keep all that talent together? I go back and forth on that. I think I would probably, if I were in the front office, I think I probably would try and negotiate a trade.
Yeah, I think you can go in that direction for sure. And they have so much talent there that they can move somebody and still have and still be fine. They're kind of that way along the defensive line to an extent as well. I don't know if they'll be able to get a guy like Marcelino McCurry-Ball through waivers and back onto the team for the practice squad. I think that's going to be a tough ask. So if you can get a trade this week, go make one, John Lynch. And that brings us to the secondary. Was there anybody in particular for you that stood out? Because I have one, but I wanted to see if you have anybody.
I certainly love to see continued success for Sam Womack. He continues to impress out there. He only got a handful of snaps and then was pulled because he is a presumptive starter for this defense. I thought Diamador Lenore looked good out there. It seems as if he may be that third cornerback behind the two starters. Certainly doesn't look good for Ambry Thomas in that situation, but I would say Diamador Lenore was one of those names that jumped off the page to me.
Yeah, that's the guy. That's the direction I was going to go. Sam Womack, we know what he is. I found it kind of funny. There were so many people that got hyped about him blitzing off the edge on the interception, but you look at the play, he was 4 yards away from the quarterback. He had no outcome. He made no impression on that play. But there were some other plays that he was good on. So Sam Womack had another good game. He's going to be the starter in that spot for the 49ers. But Diamador Lenore, I was glad to see Diamador Lenore play well again. It's good for him, right? It's good to see a guy who struggled as a rookie continue to impress. The guy, Lenore struggled on the deep balls last year. I know he had some troubles with the receivers from Minnesota on Wednesday's practice, but he came back and was better on Thursday. And then in the game, we saw him run stride for stride down the field on a deep ball. For an incompletion. And then we saw him line up in the slot and run right there, run the route with the receiver and knock the ball away. So really good game for Diamador Lenore. I was really impressed with what we saw from him. George Odom making some plays. The backup safeties making some plays. It was a pretty good game all around for the 49ers secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. These are all right players that are looking to contribute at the second, third level, maybe on special teams. And so it is something where you're trying to measure second, third string guys against second, third string guys. Tough to do, but it does seem promising that the 49ers have some depth there at a position where last year they were struck by injury and were decimated by those injuries. Didn't have anyone to turn to. It's interesting to view, too. This is such a tight roster that I think the 49ers are going to pull some of these sort of mystery injury moves where you get someone that you didn't think had a serious injury but ends up on IR to start the season as sort of reinforcements for later on. It'd be interesting to see if someone like Ambry Thomas, who is struggling, doesn't come up with some type of an injury that lands him on a injury list, keeping him on the team and allowing him to regain his footing until he can start practicing again mid-season.
Yeah, he might, he might have really hurt himself. I think, just because of what you just said, he might really have a bad injury that's going to carry him into the season. He might even have to land up on IR just because, you got to kind of have somewhere to stash him, right? I agree with you because right now he's not one of their top 5 guys, and he's just not. And the worst play of the whole weekend, the worst, you can say the worst play of the whole thing was made by Ken Crawley on the interception by George Odom. I don't know if you've seen this, but he's running down the sideline. And if you go back, check it out. You watch number 14 from the 49ers on the interception after by George Odom. He is running down the field, looking at the guy running the ball, not looking to block anybody. If he's looking to block anybody, it's somebody that's behind him. If he just turns his head and looks where he's running, he probably blocks the guy that makes the tackle. Oh. But it's whatever. But poor Ken Crawley over here blowing, beating him up. But it was a bad play on his part. Somebody pointed it out on my Twitter because I put it on there, and then somebody else, I think it was Coach Johnston, took the picture of it. And like, what is this guy looking at? He's running down the field. Brutal. He's like this. What are you doing? The ball, you're going that way. You're not looking that way. But it was the 49ers. Like I said, the 49ers backups are better than the Vikings backups, and that's about all we learned on Saturday night. A little bit about some other guys, but that's what it was.
Yes, right. Got a little more info on some of the backups on our team, but yeah, our backups are better than their backups. Feels good.
Yeah. You had 27 49ers, I think it was, that were out, and I think you had about 28-7 Vikings that were out too. I'm sure the NFL loved the fact that those two teams had practiced against each other all week long and then just pretty much decided to sit everybody for the game. That's right. Fantastic for those. Make for some
must-watch preseason action.
Hey, that's fantastic for those folks in Minnesota that paid full boat to go watch that, right?
Eesh. Oh, that's painful.
I mean, I liked it. I liked watching it because I got to see a lot of guys that you don't normally see, and it was good to kind of really get a good look at the quarterbacks and see them get some work. And it was good to see the running backs and what have you. But and the tight ends. We didn't talk about the tight ends, but the tight ends were busy.
Yes, they were. Hey, Tanner Hudson racking up the most catches, most yards. There's a chance. My early prediction of Tanner Hudson makes it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's a chance that he makes it there. And then I think that, Tyler Croft, he had a really nice reception on that one. It was a really nice ball, but it was a really nice catch along the sideline. And what else was there? Ross Dwelly had a couple of catches. I know he had the false start, but he had a couple of nice catches. He had one big play up the middle. I think there was 4 tight ends that caught passes in total. So it was a good day for that group as well. That one's another one that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out at the cut down time.
Yeah, it feels like an either or scenario. Like if Charlie Warner is healthy enough to start the season, he grabs it, and Tyler Croft is probably out. If the 49ers, see enough from Ross Dwelly to say, hey, we want to give Ross one last shot here, then Tanner Hudson is probably out. But to me, it feels like those are the players that are interchangeable, that if Croft makes it, it probably speaks to Warner's readiness to step back in. And if it is Hudson, then it's most likely Dwelly that he's unseated. I see those as being intermixed.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of that. That group's going to be, and then you also have Charlie Warner, like you said, he came back and he was practicing today and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be, that group's going to be really interesting to see how that all plays out when they get to the cut down, because we haven't seen any of Warner. I like what we've seen from guys like Croft and so on. So and as Andrew points out, Fumagali's underrated. Fumagali's performed well for them when they put him out there. So
he just hasn't gotten very many looks.
No, he hasn't. So, but I think the tight end room in general has been very good. So that's positive for the 49ers. We'll see. That's going to be cut. I think they've got to cut 5 down by tomorrow at 1:00. Right. So there'll be some cuts going on tomorrow. And then the full roster, I believe, has to be cut down to 53 by next Tuesday. So a week from tomorrow. So a lot of movement, a lot of changes coming to the roster soon. So we'll see how it plays out. But I know you got a show that's coming up, and who you have it on?
having Rohan on the program. Very excited to have the young gentleman join me again.
There you go. Big Rohan, guys, making the rounds. Everybody wants him on. I guess he must be good. So I don't know what they see in him, but you know, it is what it is. No, I had Rohan on last week. It was one of those deals we were just chatting right before, and I just said, hey, I didn't have anything going on. Asked him if he wanted to come and join me and do a stream really quick, and it was totally impromptu. We weren't going to do it. We didn't have anything planned. It just popped at the spur of the moment, and it was a lot of fun. So
that's awesome.
Hope you have a good show over there. Thank you for coming on Monday, like you always do. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Yep, and thanks to everybody over in the comment section. You guys are great. We had a pretty good group in here. If you guys, before you leave, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell notification so you know when we go live, and then get over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Tomorrow you'll be able to check out my write-up for after practice because I'll be up in Santa Clara tomorrow. So take everybody, get over to Rob's channel and check him out. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your Monday.